I'm going in search of witches.
Witches.
Witches. I guess you found me out, huh? Yeah. You should come around here on Halloween. You'd really see something then.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, we all jump off the roof and fly.
You know, sort of like a coven. You have placed Fester under some strange sexual spell.
At what time will we be spellcasting?
Hey there, witches, and welcome to Moonstone Witchery, the podcast where we talk about witchcraft and spirituality in a modern context. My name is Rhiann Lockhart, and thank you for being here with me. You know all the places you could find me: Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, everywhere, YouTube. Just find me by typing Moonstone Witchery, and a whole bunch of stuff will come up, probably with my face on it. So join me in any of these locations. What I really want you to consider doing, though, is joining me in my Witchcraft Academy, because teaching is my love. It is my joy. It is my heart center. And if you're here on the podcast, you probably want to learn more about your spiritual connection and how to connect spiritually and how to feel magical 24/7, which is possible. And I am sharing all of that in the Witchcraft Academy. So check me out, find me wherever, and I'd hope to talk to you or hear from you in any number of those places. Okay, commercial break is over. I want to continue on the shadow work series that I started whenever I recorded before. And this is a podcast episode I've been wanting to do for a minute. Now, try to hang in here, because it might sound like it's not the funnest topic, but I promise you there is joy on the other side of this topic. I want to talk about the joy of being wrong. That's right. I want to have a little mini expose on the perks and benefits and absolute magic of being wrong. So what in the actual F am I saying? We're not really taught that it's okay to be wrong. I don't know about you, but I didn't have parents who modeled that for me. I didn't have siblings who modeled it for me. I didn't have relationships where it was modeled for me. I didn't have really much of anything where saying I was wrong was like, okay. The reason this matters is because I'm really big on making sure we stay in our peace. Like, I'm very obsessed with determining the energy of our lives and being the one that's in charge of how things are going to go ahead and go, right? Like, I really think that in order for us to live a life that has minimal anxiety, minimal stress, that is not really centered on others' agendas, we have to learn how to center on ourselves. In order to live a life that feels like it belongs to us, we have to be willing to take ownership of that life, right? First of all. And that's really one of my secret agendas with everything I do, is I'm teaching you how to reclaim the authority and the sovereignty of your life. I'm teaching you how to deprogram all the programs that might have been put into you to be helpful and to help you learn how to just kind of exist here in this plane of reality, but that aren't ultimately helpful when you're trying to become who you truly are. And because my guides told me that is our purpose here. Our purpose is to be ourselves as richly and as fully as possible, and to live a life from that place, unencumbered by the shoulds or the expectations or other people's concepts of who we are and what we're supposed to do here. If our life is designed and our purpose is to be who we truly are, because there is a gift there for the collective, then we really have to learn how to do that. So that's what our shadow work is about. Our shadow work is like shining light upon all the places that we harm ourselves or disconnect ourselves or push ourselves further away from who we truly are. That's really all it is. And so you can discover where you're living out of alignment with yourself by checking in with your own anxiety and your own stress and your own hardship. And anytime you're taken out of your peace, and you can trace it back and say, where was the moment that I felt completely disconnected from some truth about myself? Where was the moment I felt misunderstood or misrepresented or misheard or misaligned? Where was the moment that someone behaved in a way that I didn't feel was appropriate? Because in those moments, the reason you feel like one thing is appropriate and yet someone's doing something else and that feels wrong, that's because there's not alignment happening between the two of you. An interaction with another person is an alchemical experience, an alchemal experience. Good luck saying that word. There is alchemy between each of us when we interact. There is an exchange of energy. There is a blending of energy. And if we misunderstand another person, or if they misunderstand us, something in that potion, something in that energetic concoction is off. Just like if you were a chef and you were cooking something and the seasoning was a little wrong, or you grabbed the wrong herb or spice or whatever, it would affect the flavor of the dish. The flavor of your day or your life gets affected when there's a miscommunication or a misunderstanding. But because we are not taught how to say when we are wrong, it's really hard to correct that when that happens. So if I'm having an experience with someone and I'm interpreting them in one way, and it turns out I might be misinterpreting them, I have options in that moment. It doesn't feel like I have options in that moment when we're taught never to admit that we are wrong. It feels like we have to double down and justify and argue and persuade and just beat the thing like to a pulp. We back ourselves into these corners and we fight to stay there, but we don't even necessarily even really want to be in those corners. We get ourselves into some prison from our own words and our own arguments and our own refusal to shift the conversation. But the key to freedom is admitting when you're wrong. None of us were born here like knowing all the things, despite what my son thinks about himself. And if my future version of Henry is listening to this, yeah, I said that. None of us are born here knowing everything. We come in with a certain amount of innate insight or knowing on like a soul level. And that's why like babies and little children are so magical. But we don't know all the things. And we're not supposed to. But we get taught a bunch of things. But listen, every single person is teaching you or sharing with you or explaining to you whatever's going on with them through their own lens. Every single person's brain has to interpret the information it's receiving. And we literally cannot interpret anything without a bias. We can get as close to unbiased as possible through self-work and like education. But we can't really ever have no bias, because the nature of being incarnated as an individual means that we will receive everything through the lens of that individual, who we are at that time. And so in this way, a couple things are true. One, all of reality as you know it is fake. It really is, though. Like, yo, like all of reality as you know it is fake. And this is because every single person is having their own experience, which means that none of them are the same, which means that none of them are real, which means there is no such thing as real, which means you might as well go ahead and give yourself access to whatever kind of life you want to have. Just saying. Your mom's interpretation of the world is probably very different than your interpretation of the world, which is probably very different than your, I don't know, best friend's interpretation of the world. Because we are all just doing it the most. We are all just living our lives as ourselves. We are all interpreting reality based on our own unique set of circumstances and brain chemistry and genetic makeup and learned experiences and pre-programming and traumatic background and neurodivergence and blah, 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 blah. Like, we are interpreting reality. Everyone's interpretation is different. So why then would we have a hard time being wrong? Yo, I'm wrong all the time. Side note, this is why I'm so much more comfortable just dropping into channel and letting spirit talk through me, because spirit's rarely wrong. And when spirit tells me something, I'm like, I don't know why, but I'm doing it. I have been smoke cleansing my yard, for example, for the past 3 days. I am legitimately taking this huge pot outside, like a roasting pan from Goodwill or somewhere for $4.99, and I am loading it with charcoal, and I am loading it with frankincense and myrrh resin, and I am putting entire Palo Santo sticks in there, and incense is everywhere, and I am smoke cleansing the ever-loving life out of my yard. And I don't know why I'm doing that, but spirit told me to. And on the heels of a bunch of weird, strange occurrences happening in my life, I was like, all right, why not? Why it's my yard, not 100 on. Why it's not my house, also not 100 on. It's just my backyard. However, our backyards represent our inner selves and our inner world. And there can be things going on out there that can give you insight into what's going on within your life. So I am smoke cleansing my yard because spirit told me to, because spirit's right. Now, do I probably seem a little bit weird to maybe even my own family members, even though they're used to me doing really weird things all the time? Yeah, probably. Do I seem weird to my neighbors? Definitely. Do I care? No. I really don't. The reason it's important that we are able to know when we are wrong is because what we're saying when we say we're wrong is we're like, oh, I didn't understand what your version of reality was. My bad. I was only looking at my version of reality. Now that I've received the information as to what your version of reality is, that makes sense, and I can go ahead and shift my opinion. People are like magical beings. I don't know. I mean, people suck, right? Obs. But at the same time, I want to be like, wow, people are kind of amazing as science creatures, like animals. If my dog was able to talk to me and tell me all of her complex thoughts and tell me about how she was thinking one way, but then she read something else and started thinking about it another way, I would be like, yes, that's awesome. You're pretty spectacular. I watched my dog the other day while I was trying to teach a class in the academy, by the way. She was legitimately standing on her back legs trying to turn the doorknob and open the door to go outside to see her other mommy. And I was like, wow, this dog is smart AF. And yet we do smart AF things all the time. And we're never like, oh my God, I'm so smart. We're not giving ourselves credit. And we are amazing. You can hold so many complex thoughts. You are a genius, seriously. You can perceive things and think about them and connect dots and put things together in a way that nobody else can because you are a unique individual. And side note, this is why, well, not why, but this is part of the why as to why spirit even incarnates, because you are a unique individual that is only being experienced in this world one time. Yeah, we can go ahead and reincarnate as much as we want. But the unique, individual, magical being known as you is only here right now. And that's pretty cool because Spirit wanted to be like, what happens if we put all this stuff together? And then it like sets it off like a top spinning across the floor, and it just kind of watches it, and it's watching itself experience that turn of events. But because you're so amazing and you can have all these different experiences and draw all these different conclusions and like talk yourself in and out of whatever you want or need to, which can be super frustrating if you're one of these people, especially if you're like a Libra. I feel like Libras really suffer with this. Like Libras and Libra moons have a hard time because and Libra risings. I feel like it's hard to be a Libra because Libras are like always trying to see both sides of everything and like make everything as positive as possible. Libras are like nice Geminis. Like a Gemini is going to go ahead and see both sides of everything, but just be like, I don't care. Which one do I want to do? But a Libra is like, oh my God, I see all these options. I don't know what to do because like I don't want to hurt anybody and I want to make everything feel nice and pretty and pleasant. Like a Libra gets really stuck because they can effectively out convince themselves of anything, right? And so anyway, if we all have the capacity to do this, we're underutilizing our own gifts and abilities by refusing to be wrong. Did you have like a mom who was like never said sorry? Or like a parent who like was always right, like their way or the highway, like, you know, that's what was like modeled for me. It was like very, I've made a decision. Do not second guess my opinions. I don't have to explain myself to you. How dare you? Like a bunch of sentences like that, you know? And it's like your decision was made without even like inquiring as to what else is going on within anybody else. So a couple thoughts about this. If we can kind of get comfortable with being wrong or having a willingness to be wrong, guess what happens? We get to be more right. See, this is another one of those fun little juicy, delicious paradoxes of life and of the universe. The more willing you are to be wrong, the more you get to be right. And if we were in a class right now, I would be like, who can tell me what I mean when I say that? But we're not, so I'll just answer my own question. What I mean when I say that is, if you're willing to be wrong, it means you're less attached to whatever you had a knee-jerk response about, whatever program initiated in your like computer system of a brain, right? And you're not attached to that being the only answer, so you can investigate or listen or explore someone else's point of view with curiosity and a willingness to derive wisdom from a situation. If you're willing to be wrong, you can see things in a totally different way. And you can be like, oh, whoa, I hadn't thought about it like that. Or, OMG, like, I did not realize that was part of why you were doing the thing you were doing. Like, a great example of this was, like, I was telling my kids, like, okay, screen time's off. Like, turn off your phones or whatever, your tablets, whatever you're in. And my daughter got super upset. Now, she doesn't get upset. She's the second child, so she's, like, super mellow, at least that's been my experience. And she doesn't get mad at me, really. She doesn't really get upset. She's super easygoing. And she was like pissed. And I was like, I guess I must have been stressed that day, because usually I'm kind of chill myself. But I was like, no, it's time for bed. Like, blah, you know, screen's off, right? And she was so super mad. And when I got her upstairs and I was like brushing her hair and like talking to her all nice, I was like, what? Why were you so upset? Like, what's going on? And I was expecting her to be like tired or her tummy hurt or whatever, maybe it was. But she was like, I was just about to finish this thing in my game that I had been working on all day. And I was literally like moments away from finishing it when you told me to turn it off. So that sucked to hear, right? Like, I felt so bad. But had she given me more information, I would have been like, oh yeah, like take 5 more minutes. Like, definitely don't want your entire day of work to be nullified or just ended just because of some arbitrary number on the clock. Now, listen, that's how I parent, okay? I'm not telling you how to parent. I'm just giving you an example of like a moment where had I had more information, I would have changed what I was doing to make everybody happier. And this happens all the time, especially in our adult situations. Someone will say something to us and we think we know what they mean, but we probably don't. Language is helpful to a point, but because we are amazing science creatures, we all have the ability to attach other things to words. You know, that's not really the best way of describing what I'm trying to say. What I'm trying to say is we all have the ability to hear a word, but a word has other meanings to it to us than it might to the person who spoke it. We just have different associations with things. Like I said a second ago, my mother, one of her favorite things to say was like, how dare you, right? So God help a person who ever says that to me now in my adult life, because I am triggered out by that phrase. I don't like it. There's lots of things like this that we have associations with that are often unconscious associations. We don't realize that we have them, and we respond to them as if the person issuing the sentence knew that we were going to receive it in a certain type of way. And because we have that part of it attached to us, we make the assumption that they understand or that they know that. But so often, more often than not, people have no idea how they're impacting us or how they're affecting us or what they're doing to us or what we think they're saying to us. Because someone could say a sentence to me and it means like very neutral things to them. But maybe if it was a sentence that I've heard before from someone who was not neutral, it's not going to land neutral within me. And now I feel some type of way and they know I feel some type of way. So then they feel some type of way. Communication is kind of our salvation. But we don't really allow ourselves to be vulnerable enough to ask certain questions or say certain sentences that really would help make everybody's experience on this planet easier, but even everybody's experience in your own little micro mini world that you're living in. If I have the capacity to be like, when you say that sentence to me, I hear blah, 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 blah. Is that what you're intending? If I can say that, then that lets the other person be like, oh my God, no, like I was just asking you to like take out the trash or whatever. But if I don't have enough awareness about myself and my own triggers or my own like responses to things, I will make assumptions. I will assume that what somebody says to me, that they intended it to land how it lands in me. And 90% of the time, they have no idea because they're not me. And they didn't have the same set of circumstances as I did. And this is also why it's the hardest to heal our family dynamics, because often our family, like our siblings, did grow up in a similar environment to us. And so they have similar associations. So if one of my siblings was to say a sentence to me that was like notoriously harmful growing up, they might actually have that intention about it, more so than if someone random was to say it. So healing in the family is a little harder because there's a little bit more similarities there. But it's also a little bit easier if we can be like all awake and aware of that and like avoid certain things. But I'm kind of off on a tangent. So in a moment where someone says something and let's say I take it personally and I get super offended, right? It might take a second for us to sort out what's even going on. But if I can say, I got really effed up when you told me to do XYZ thing, the other person has a chance to hear me and receive me if they've done enough of their own self-work and don't immediately get super defensive, which is a whole other thing. The other person has a chance to hear me and receive me, and they have the opportunity to respond to me and be like, oh, well, let me clarify what my intentions were with saying this to you. A prime example happened in my life yesterday. So Audrey was concerned about my health and how much I've been working recently, but she also needed me to do something for her that really only I can do. She asked somebody else to help with this thing, and she didn't talk to me about it first. Now, when I showed up to see her when I had a break, she didn't tell me that she asked for help. She said, I asked this person to do this thing. And I was like, but that's the thing I'm doing. And she didn't even get another word in because I was like super messed up by this. And I was very like, how are you going to do that when you had already asked me to do it? I'm feeling betrayed and upset, blah, 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 blah. Now, because I was willing to pause eventually and to listen to her, I was able to hear a bunch of things that I didn't receive in the original moment when I found out that she had made this decision without talking to me about it first. And some of the things I could hear were, I was trying to be helpful because you are tired. You aren't feeling well. You have a lot on your plate right now. See, my messed up brain took what she said and it made it all personal. This is a point of immense shadow work for me, by the way. It took it personally, which is not something I hardly ever do anymore in my life. And I went to the worst possible conclusion, and I couldn't hear the rest of what she was saying until I paused and I was like, wait a second, I am not acting like myself. What is happening with me? I must be super triggered out. And I was able to go, I'm super triggered out. Give me all the information so I can understand you better. And when I got all the information and I realized, she's coming from a really kind place, and she didn't ask this other person to do the thing. She asked the other person to help with the thing. Oh my God, everything that I'm hearing is different than what I thought. And I was able to be like, I'm so sorry. I'm wrong. I thought I understood in a really bad way what was going on. And I was wrong because I was triggered out and I was upset and I wasn't listening. And in being wrong, I was able to learn her better. I was able to find out, oh my God, she's actually being really thoughtful and kind and considerate of me. And she's actually trying to help me. I was able to learn how to interpret her differently in the future. I was able to have the full scope of the information about her, and that makes me be more right about her in the future. Helps me to understand her motivations for her decisions. It helps me to understand why she does things she does. It helps me to learn her better so I can avoid moments like that in the future. And because our relationship's always been like this, moments like that are really few and far between at this point, because we've learned how to learn each other. But listen to that sentence, right? Do you think you're walking through your life and you're learning how to learn about it? Do you think you're living in your life and you're learning how to learn about yourself? Are you learning how to learn about your partner or your friends or your family or your parents or your kids or your pets? Or are you applying a should dynamic to them? If you're my mother, you should be like this. If you're my partner, you should be like that. If you're my child, you should do these things. People don't naturally match up with shoulds. Shoulds are like blanket statements that need a lot of tweaking in order to actually be effective. But if you have a willingness to learn about the people in your life, then you need a willingness to be wrong. Because when we are in the process of learning, it means we don't know everything yet. When you reach expert status, you still don't know everything. People who are experts in their fields, they don't know everything about it. They know how to learn about it. They know a lot about it. No one is an expert in a way that means that they are 100% right 100% of the time. The only thing you're an expert on, potentially, is yourself. But even then, you're a biased narrator. Even then, you're not always holding yourself accountable to yourself. I wonder if there's really anything we're an expert on. But my point is, if you're being in your life in a capacity that seeks to be curious and willing to learn, that by default means you will be wrong some of the time. Because that's what learning is. Learning is the process by which we seek new information and we discover facts and input and insight and info that we didn't previously have or that we didn't previously understand with accuracy. So if we're learning, that means we don't already know. And if we don't already know, then we aren't always right. And this is okay. People have a really hard time being wrong. Do an if-then statement with yourself for me. If I am wrong, then that means blank. If I'm wrong, then that means I am stupid. Then that means I am unworthy. Then it means I am insignificant. Then it means that I am whatever. I don't know. Bad in some way. But what if what if that's wrong? What if that premise is wrong? What if we reverse that or take it and actually look at it? If I am wrong, I am gathering more information. If I am wrong, I am evolving into something else. If I am wrong, I am in the process of becoming more right. The more information you gather, the more information you have, the better equipped you are to make decisions, the more right you become. When in reality, I think wrong and right both don't even exist because of the whole thing I said in the beginning, how we're viewing the world is all just interpretive dance. If you have a willingness to be wrong, you are less harmed on a less frequent basis. Maybe I said that incorrectly. If you're willing to be wrong, you are less harmed on a more frequent basis. And what I'm trying to say is the amount of harm that you incur is less if you're willing to be wrong. This is because sometimes we assume that we know what people's motives are. Sometimes we assume that we understand how something is or how it functions or what's happening. And with more information, we have more insight and we have more wisdom and we can shift. Could you imagine the power of having a parent who was willing to be wrong? I can't even fathom it. How liberating it would have been for there to be permission granted to not know everything right away. To literally be oh my gosh, I had no idea that was happening. Thank you for the information. And here's the other part of it, right? When people get into a relationship with me for the first time, I don't know why I said for the first time, but when people get in a relationship with me, whether it's a friendship or a business partnership of some kind or a work dynamic or a romantic relationship or whatever the case may be, anyone entering into a relationship with me is a little thrown off at first because number one, I'm super direct with my words. I don't hide things in my language. I don't make people interpret what I'm saying. I refuse to be passive about anything I'm saying. If I'm direct, it's because I mean it. What I say is what I mean. I don't cloak things. I don't lead the conversation. But secondly, I will stop in the middle of a sentence when I'm listening to someone else and I will be oh my gosh, okay, I see it completely differently right now. Thank you. I am wrong. I hear you. I appreciate it. I totally changed my mind. Like, I have been having legitimate, like, I will have an argument with someone and I'm listening actively to what they're saying. And the second that something clicks into my mind where I hear that they're coming from a place of woundedness, or I can hear that moment where the misinterpretation or the misunderstanding happened, I will just shut the whole argument down. I will be like, wait a second, did you just say that you thought that I did this thing on purpose or because I was mad at you? Full stop right there. I totally understand why you felt that way. I can see how it looked like that. That was completely not my intention. I am sorry. I was wrong to do it that way. I won't do it again. I fully understand why you feel the way you do. And this is like weird for the other person because they are not used to this, because this is not modeled like literally anywhere in our lives. But it's so peaceful and liberating to just be like, oh my God, I see why you're upset. Oops, my bad. And it makes it permissive for other people to show up to you like that. And when we have this as a part of who we are, we aren't afraid as much, because there's not as much pressure on us to interpret everything correctly. We get to say, what I'm hearing is this, but it feels like XYZ. Is that right? We get to say, I'm mad because I interpreted your actions like this. Is that what you meant to do? And they get to be like, no, I don't even know why you would think that. And then that's a moment where you get to decide to defend why you would think it and be like, because everybody knows that that's not what you're supposed to do. Anytime you're ever saying everybody, it's because you don't feel comfortable taking ownership of your own stuff, just so you know. Everybody is a secret word that means me, myself, and I. But everybody makes us feel safer because we're attributing it to some imaginary collective who agrees with us. So it's like when we feel really vulnerable and we're telling them something that's really vulnerable, we'll cloak it under the word everybody by being like, this is normal, I swear. Even though who is everybody, right? Everybody just means that's how I was raised, or that's what I think is normal. But we could double down and just like enter into the conversation and be like, nah, this is why I think that. This is why I'm right to be mad because. Or we can be investigative. And we can be like, interesting that I took it that way, but you're saying you didn't mean it that way. Weird. And the investigator is not attached to being right. The investigator is concerned with what actually transpired here. Because sometimes y'all are out here fighting to be right about something that hurts you, by the way. Like, yeah, I could have had a whole moment where I was like, I am being betrayed right now because you asked somebody else to do this thing. Do I want to be right about that, though? Like, for reals? And I'm so mad about it because it doesn't make any sense. I feel extra betrayed because I didn't see it coming. Well, maybe I didn't see it coming because that's not what was happening. Maybe I just interpreted it like that because I'm a wounded individual just like you, just like everyone. We are all carrying wounds with us. I know I am carrying wounds with me. And so when you're fighting really hard to be right, ask yourself if you even want to be right about the thing you're fighting for. Because a lot of times we're having repeated arguments with our romantic partners, and we don't even want the argument to be the truth, but we're arguing to prove that our feelings are, that like our perspective is true, and we don't even necessarily want it to be true. Have you stopped and investigated the situation from the other person's point of view? Have you stopped and wondered if there is just a dramatic miscommunication and a disconnect there? This is shadow work because it forces you to ask yourself questions about your own default settings. This is shadow work because it forces you to be accountable to yourself. What do I want the outcome to be? How do I want this relationship to feel? We're all like having these experiences without having a plan or a goal or like a roadmap. What do you want the relationship to feel like? Is it peaceful? I would like my relationship to feel peaceful and safe and loving and kind and connected. Am I steering my interactions with my partner towards those words or away from those words? Is my insistence on being right towards those goals or away from those goals? Like, my mother has a narrative that the world is out to get her and she's a victim. It's a really hard mindset to break. Some people are literally too deep in their own programming, and they believe themselves too hard to break this programming. But I believe that you could break it if you are feeling like you're in a victim mindset. I believe in you, because do you want to be right about that? Do you want the world to be against you? Does that feel safe to you? And for some of you, yeah, that does feel safe to you. And that's where the shadow work begins. Why do I feel safer there? And most likely, by the way, it's because we feel safer assuming the worst and just fighting it off than we do holding space for something to be good and feeling disappointed. But that's a different convo for a different day. Or you could come join my academy and watch the shadow work class we did on expectations. But our willingness to see things differently allows us to expand our center of compassion. Our willingness to see things differently makes room for other people's lived experiences to become a part of our lived experiences. Our willingness to see things differently means that we have the capacity to change our own minds and to be greater, wiser, smarter, more expansive, more compassionate, more loving, more gentle, more peaceful, that we have more ease. Your interpretation is not a fact. It is simply information that you are able to alter with more information. And the second you realize that, you level way up, because you are constantly educating yourself on the world around you instead of just knowing everything about the world around you. Now, this episode isn't for people who struggle hard with self-confidence or ever allowing themselves to be right. This episode is for people who tend to have more of a combative edge to themselves at times, who are struggling in their relationship with the same arguments over and over again. This episode is for people who feel safer in being the authority or directing the dynamic of a situation. This episode is for people who feel victimized. This episode is for people who feel stuck. I'll tell you something about being stuck. Sometimes we are like, I don't understand why I keep trying to call forth or manifest this different reality for myself, and I can feel it just near me, but it's not here yet. What's happening? That is the number one sign that you have to make a decision about something. If you are feeling stuck, it is because you are on a routine with yourself that is the same, and something needs to change for all that energy to flow into your life that you've been trying to call forth. You are blocking your own energy by refusing to do something differently. You have to make a choice. If you want something to change, you have to change. If you want something to change, you have to change something. What do you need to change or do differently? What decision are you avoiding making that you need to make? And secretly, you know the right answer. So please give yourself credit for knowing what you need to do, and please try to make room for yourself to do that thing. Now, if you're the kind of person who's always just kind of people-pleasing and doing whatever for other people or letting other people be right all the time, this is an opportunity for you to understand them better and to begin narrating yourself to them. If you are frequently misinterpreted by somebody who is always right, this is an opportunity for you to start to say, could you please hear me differently? Or to send them the link to this podcast episode so they have the ability to be like, oh, I gotta change my mind a little bit. Defiant people have to talk themselves into doing things differently, and they have to agree with it first. And in order to get them to agree to it, they have to see the benefit in doing things differently for themselves, right? And so we need to begin to understand that nothing is set in stone. If you are the kind of person who feels like you're never right, or you don't have authority, or you don't have a voice, it's an opportunity for you to begin to use your voice. Because what you've just heard me say is there is no right. A lot of this episode was skewed towards people who are just like very assured and like kind of tunnel focused. But for those of you who are more placating or diminutive or easygoing in a way that lets yourselves be walked over a little bit, I want you to start to find your voice and be empowered by the truth that there is no such thing as right. There is merely only your perspective, and you are allowed to, lest I say you are actually encouraged and almost required to, if you're going to align with your true self, to use your voice and to say, this is my perspective. This is what's happening for me. And then you get to say, how can you make room for my perspective to be valid? How can you make room for my perspective to be valid? You didn't say, how can you make room for me to be right? You didn't say, you need to make room for me to be right. You said, how do you do that? Can you go ahead and ask yourselves, like, how you can make some space for me to be valid as well? Because remember, there is a rule of energy, and it goes, my needs are equal to your needs. My needs are equal to your needs. So if you're the person who always needs to be right, go ahead and say to yourself, am I making room for everyone's needs to be equal to mine? Hello? And if you are the person who is like always just rolling over and just taking it, right? You get to say, is there room for me to have an equal share of value here in this conversation? Because both ways of being in the world are dishonoring of the self. The person who's always trying to be right is putting way too much pressure on themselves, and they feel stressed out all the time because they believe that their undoing is in being wrong. And really, their amazing capacity to know everything is what's happening there. But the person who never gets to have a voice feels too terrified to speak in case they're wrong. Everyone's afraid of being wrong. There is no such thing as wrong. There is only your perspective. And your perspective is valid because you are a person. And every single person is valid simply because they exist. You exist here. Therefore, you are valid. You are not inherently bad or evil or wrong. You are not inherently unworthy or undeserving. And if anyone has ever treated you that way, that was because of them being who they are and not because of your worth or your value. You have value because you exist. And if you have trouble using your voice and putting yourself out there, it is because you are not granting yourself the grace of having as much value as other people. And if you are someone who speaks a lot or overrides other people or really always needs to be right, you are valuing your own opinion more than other people's because you are afraid that if you are wrong, you will somehow be less than or other negative things. And in either case, both people are doing themselves a disservice. What if it's okay to be wrong? What if it's actually great? What if in being wrong, you get to immediately stop arguing about something and feel better? What if in being wrong, you get to be wrong about a bunch of things that feel scary and bad and hard to you? What if in being wrong, you get to reach out to someone else and get some actual help and support and learn and see things differently and do things differently and have different outcomes and feel way better about your life? I don't know who taught us that we're supposed to know all the things, but we're not. We are allowed to know where we struggle or have a hard time. We are allowed to seek support and information from other people. We are allowed to be like, I don't know how to do this right. Can you help me? We are allowed to be evolving. But if we're right all the time, how are we going to evolve? We already got there. Everything's done. We good? No, we're not. Are you like the happiest you could ever be? Then you're not done yet. Right? When we have a willingness to be wrong, we get to be really curious about the world. We get to have so much more joy. We get to laugh at ourselves. We get to make fun of ourselves. We get to approach other people and give them credit for the things they're good at and let them kind of add value to our lives by explaining things to us their way or showing us who they are, which means we get to have these really authentic connections with other people because we can see something in them that is maybe missing within us, and we can absorb some of that. When we are willing to be wrong, we get to have real connections with others. We get to understand them better. We get to understand ourselves way better. Curiosity is a really fun way to live. The Fool card in Tarot is really the embodiment of curiosity. That dude's just out there wandering, about to do whatever, because he doesn't know what's going on. He's like, oh, where am I? What am I doing here? And that's really what our spirits are saying when we arrive into these bodies. They're like, who am I now? What's happening? Let me go investigate who this creature is. When you're willing to be wrong, you are so much easier to connect to and to relate to. You're so much less threatening and scary and harmful to other people. When you're willing to be wrong, you are so humanized. And people really respond to someone being vulnerable enough to say, oh my gosh, I was wrong. Because everyone knows that feeling, and everyone respects someone being brave enough to say that and to ask for a different point of view. It is really confusing at first because we are so not used to it, and because no one gave us the grace or the gift of being wrong or modeling that to us or showing it to us. But my gosh, it's such a big gift. So I want you to practice with this. I want you to practice being wrong. Practice being wrong, and even just start by telling yourself that you were wrong. Practice telling yourself you were wrong, and instead of beating yourself up for it, because there's no such thing as should. I should have known better. Why? That's fake. If you should have known better, you would have known better, and you would have done differently. You did know better, and that was what you knew, and that is what you did. This isn't an opportunity to beat yourself up. Practice being wrong, practice being curious when you're wrong, and practice being super amused by yourself in all of your humanness. And I want you to see how this can change things for you. A willingness to be wrong extends vulnerability to someone else. It says, I think I'm not interpreting this right. Can you tell me what's happening in your world? And then your side of that is to listen, to hear their side. You hearing them doesn't make them right. It just gives you more information. And then you can go, oh, well, when I understand your point of view, I can understand why you acted the way you did. I think we're both misunderstanding something. No one's right or wrong. We're all just doing the best we can with what our perception is of the information that we have in the moment. So I want you to practice with granting yourself some grace and granting others some grace and finding the gray zone of doing our best and information gathering so that you can get more leveled up with your ability to understand people. And this is some real shadow work. I'm making this series on shadow work because shadow work is one of the most often requested things. And I think it's the most frequently misunderstood things. So I'm hoping that these podcasts are helpful. I think I said the word post a second ago, but I meant podcast. They're helpful so that you can learn how to learn about yourself in a way that isn't judgmental and mean, in a way that is curious and expansive and permissive, because you're doing the best you can with what you know right now. And you can journal about these things and practice implementing them into your life. Because if you are listening to this podcast with the intention to learn witchcraft, I'm going to tell you, a willingness to be wrong really helps your witchcraft too, because it helps you to discern what kind of work you're supposed to be doing. Where am I interpreting something as a fact that it might not actually be? Especially if you out here doing any type of justice seeking or baneful magic, you want to make sure you're right. You want to make sure you're interpreting that correctly. You want to make sure you're having all the information that you need, because it's important. Because if it turns out that there was a very valid reason for someone to be acting the way they're acting and you're just seeing it through your lens and you're going to punish them for it, the universe might disagree with you. That could suck for you. The more we do this work, the more we find out that we're actually all just trying our best and that things are a lot better than we think. I hope that this was helpful, and I hope to hear you or see you or meet you in any of my spaces online. I'll see you over on moonstonewitchery.com or in the Facebook group or wherever you choose to find me. Go follow my TikTok, and I will talk to you soon.